episode. The Seesaw Yardcocks going back and forth on the season, this time riding the highs of an emotional 2 out of 3 game series out there in Baton Rouge. We'll have your complete post-game coverage of that. Look ahead to the rest of the season and see if this clears up the muddy picture in the SEC and South Carolina's bid to host a regional in the postseason. The NFL draft also is behind us. We'll take a look at what Gamecocks were drafted where, to who, and what Gamecocks have signed some free agent deals after the draft. Complete turnover on the basketball team as well, and we might have some time for your top 10 sporting coaching rants of all time. Stick with us on the Carolina CrowLine.
If you depend on prescription opioid painkillers or heroin to get through each day, you may ask yourself, how did I get here? Withdrawal and rehab seem like scary and difficult roads, but there is a different way. I know because I was just like you and I found it at turntohelpnow.com. At turntohelpnow.com, I learned about different ways to get help, including those in a private setting without the need for daily visits. Find your courage and go to turntohelpnow.com today.
Mom, I had the best dream!
Well, good morning to you, too.
Okay, so I was a knight. I had a sword, and our house was a castle. There was this angry dragon. It was kinda scary.
Oh, yeah?
But I protected the castle.
Oh, that's my brave little man. I'm glad our castle is safe.
Your home is your castle, and sometimes you need help defending it. The National Association of Realtors supports maintaining homeowner tax incentives because they make home ownership more affordable for more families. Learn more at houselogic.com.
This is a referral service. Calls will be routed to an independent referral insurance agency.
Do you know the number one cause of bankruptcy? No, it's not losing your job or running up credit card debt. It's not even divorce. It's medical costs. If you and your family don't have health insurance, just one serious illness or accident could be financially devastating. But now there's good news, really good news. A health insurance hotline has been established to provide health insurance for all Americans, even uninsured Americans with pre-existing conditions. Now anyone can get health insurance even if you have a pre-existing medical condition. I repeat, now anyone can get health insurance coverage. Call now for a free no-obligation quote on affordable health plans available to you. Again, this is a free hotline for anyone, even if you have pre-existing conditions. Protect you and your family from sudden unexpected medical costs. Call the free health insurance hotline right now at 1-800-838-5562. That's 1-800-838-5562. Call 1-800-838-5562.
The Southeastern Conference has established the most outstanding college football tradition in the country. The 14 member institutions have combined for an unprecedented 459 bowl appearances. Key to the success of SEC football is support of the many loyal fans who have helped the conference lead the nation in total attendance for 29 consecutive years. The SEC salutes the more than 6.5 million fans who will attend a game at an SEC stadium this year.
Welcome into the Carolina CrowLine. We are just getting the show kicked off here on this another live edition for the week of April 29th. We are just in the first few minutes of the program. Of course, we are coming to you live, like I just mentioned, on Spreecast.com. That's www.spreecast.com. You can catch all of our weekly episodes live on Spreecast as we stream across the internet here at the CRM Sports Studios with the Carolina CrowLine and many other programs around the SEC, ACC, and some smaller schools like Citadel and Southern Miss as well, the CRM Sports. Just go to iTunes and type in CRM Sports, and you should see all of the podcasts for all of your Southern college sports talk. Of course, we are Carolina CrowLine, so you would just go to iTunes, type in Carolina CrowLine under podcasts, and see all of the past podcasts for free for you to download at your convenience. You can always email us, carolina@y'all.com, carolina@y'all.com, if you want to be a part of the conversation here on the Carolina CrowLine. You can also call us 803-450-0086. That's 803-450-0086. Also, if you're catching us live on the internet on Monday evenings, you can chat with us during the program on Spreecast. Go ahead with your thoughts, opinions, and questions about whatever enters your mind about Gamecock sports or whatever we happen to be discussing as well. Also, Spreecast has a brand new app for your smartphone. You can go ahead and download that app for free as well, and then go ahead and listen to us right there in your smartphone. You sitting on the couch while your wife is watching Real Housewives of Antarctica or whatever's going on, you can just go ahead and pop your headphones into your iPhone and then just listen away while she knows nothing of the wiser. Plenty to get to this week. Of course, I think the lead story, many lead stories this week, but I think the story to me that takes precedent over everything else that was going on this week of Gamecock sports is the baseball team coming down the home stretch. We talked about this critical stretch of games here against Kentucky, LSU, and then Vanderbilt coming up this weekend, able to sweep Kentucky and then take 2 of 3 from LSU. South Carolina really making its case for being one of the top echelon SEC teams here late in the season as coming off their back-to-back-to-back appearances in the College World Series final. Everybody was asking the questions this year. What would this team look like? A lot of leaders have left. Of course, Ray Tanner being the biggest leader of all. Chad Holbrook taking over the program in his first year. How would his philosophy and style change the baseball team? And how would the departure of certain stalwarts on the program, a Michael Roth, a Matt Price, an Evan Marzilli, a Christian Walker, how would these guys affect the program? And would the leaders step forward and take that leadership role in continuing the wonderful ride it's been here for the past 3 seasons? And South Carolina has stumbled out of the gate, being swept at home by Arkansas for the first time since the new stadium was opened, being swept in an SEC series here at home, muddled through the middle of the season, even as recently as this week, dropping a game to a Gardner-Webb squad that really South Carolina has absolutely no business losing to. 19 out of 20 times South Carolina should not ever drop a game to a team like a Gardner-Webb. And then all of a sudden, coming off that sweep of Kentucky, you drop a game up in the Charlotte area against Gardner-Webb, and then you have this 3-game series against the number 2 team in the nation looming, and the questions come again. What does this team need to do to actually get a spark lit and inspire some offense, some middle relief, and just continue to just we've come to expect a nationally dominant program, and would that be able to continue? South Carolina does not disappoint, going 2 games out of 3 in LSU, losing the opening game of the series on Friday 5-2, but then winning on Saturday and Sunday 4-2 and 4-zip respectively to hand LSU, I believe, its first SEC series loss, its first SEC loss at home on the year as well. So we know South Carolina can do it. The question is, there's a lot of work left to be done. Look no further than one Vanderbilt team that actually takes LSU's spot as a number 2 team in the country now, 19-2. Oddly enough, Vanderbilt has such an impressive SEC streak that they are in jeopardy of knocking out the Gamecocks record for SEC wins, which it set in 2000, a lead record in a 30-game season, going 25-5 in the SEC. Vanderbilt right now, with about 10 games left to play, is on pace at 19-2 to go ahead and knock that record out, but they're going to have to go through the Gamecocks to do it. So some pride on the line here when the Vanderbilt Commodores come to the Ray in Columbia for a 3-game set this weekend. Vanderbilt riding high, of course, with a 19-2 SEC record. Going 8-2 in their last 10, riding a 6-game win streak, come in and try and step on the face of the Gamecocks on their way to making a name for their own record. Vanderbilt continued to have another successful weekend. South Carolina is currently in 4th place in the SEC by a half a game behind Arkansas. Arkansas with a record of 13-7, South Carolina 13-8, and of course Arkansas holds that tiebreaker over the Gamecocks after that early season sweep. So South Carolina is going to look to continue to ride that momentum coming off of LSU. Difficult weekend on Friday with that middle relief again. Just guys continuing to get behind in the count, continuing to not be able to put batters away. But again, what can you say about Jack Wynkoop, SEC Freshman of the Week again for the second week in a row, a guy who kind of got off to a rough start and had a difficult beginning half of the season, wondering if he was going to be able to be that weekend, that third weekend guy. bumped from the weekend rotation, has some good middle starts, but with the injuries and the lack of production from a Colby Holmes and a couple other guys that have had their shot to enter into that weekend rotation, Jack Wynkoop has really been able to come around here late in the season and be a solid contributor. So while I think this weekend, if you were to ask Chad Holbrook, is kind of going to be a wait-and-see situation with a Nolan Belcher on Friday, Jordan Montgomery on Saturday, and depending if they have to use Jack Wynkoop out of the bullpen on any of those days, on Friday or Saturday, then he's definitely going to be made available there in relief if he has to go long innings. But if he's able to stay in the bullpen and keep his arm fresh, definitely I would look for him to continue to be the Sunday night starter. So South Carolina doing some big things. The job is not done yet. Right now, South Carolina is 6-4 in its last 10 6 games back in the SEC, 13-8 overall in the league. I think if South Carolina, 33-12 overall, can get to 40 wins, I think that's really going to be kind of the benchmark for that regional spot. If South Carolina can get to 40 wins, if they somehow manage to take 2 or 3 from Vanderbilt, don't slip up against Georgia, and get at least 1, maybe even 2 out there at Mississippi State to finish the season, I think a national seed is possible. I think that would have been unexpected. We talked about that last week, and at this point, the question mark was still up in the air. We didn't know what South Carolina was going to do against LSU. But overall, I think if South Carolina can somehow manage to scratch out 7 more victories, whether that be a sweep against Georgia, a sweep against Vanderbilt, if they can get to 40 wins at 33-12 overall, 13-8 in the conference, I think they've got a real solid shot to continue that postseason ride that us Gamecock fans have been so accustomed to taking here in late June and early July. So, a lot of people talk about, expectations. The worst thing about winning a national championship is that Gamecock fans are going to get this entitled sense of success and that at the first sign of trouble, people are going to go running. Well, I say, what's so bad about that? We're going to jump out to a short break right now, and we'll be right back on the Carolina CrowLine. Welcome back into the Carolina CrowLine. I'm your host, Tyler Garrett. Glad you can join us on the program. A lot of stuff to talk about in this short hour, this week's episode. A little bit about the Gamecocks in their 2-3 series win over LSU. I'm going to toss it out and let you hear from the SEC Freshman of the Week, and that was Sunday starter Jack Wynkoop, and get you guys to listen to some of his thoughts after that series victory out at LSU.
Is it as easy as you made it look?
I don't really know what to say to that. They're a great team. They all have really good approaches at the plate, and they're tough. Luckily, I was able to kind of minimize the damage, get them hit it on the ground, pop it up. I'm pretty happy with how that went.
Did you think they were maybe overswinging a little bit, or was that just a result of you kind of reading the scouting report and knowing what they were going to swing?
They swing hard, and when they make contact, they do it really well. Coach Myers calls a great game. He knows what to throw, and I think we had them fooled a couple times, but they also guessed right a couple times, so we just got to kind of deal with it.
You get out of the 7th inning after that leadoff double. Did you want to keep going, or did you kind of know that they were going to go with Westy in the 8th?
I wanted to keep going, but Westy and Webb are two great lefties out of there. I don't have any problem giving it to them and letting them do their thing.
When you come down here, start a game, you win your first time at LSU. Where does it go from here, man? How can you top this one?
It's a great feeling. It's a tough place to play. I'm glad we got 2 wins here, but now you just move on to next weekend. We got a tough weekend next weekend too, and a tough rest of the season, so we'll see how it goes.
All right, so there's Jack Wynkoop again. I tell you what, if he can really kind of come on here late in the season and just establish himself as that reliable third option, I think that really is going to go a long way into relaxing some concerns that a lot of Gamecocks have about this pitching staff. I think, obviously, if you've watched any of the baseball this year or listened to it on the radio, you know that middle relief is a really big concern. And if you're constantly waiting to see if you're going to need Jack Wynkoop on a Friday or a Saturday, that's really going to add stress to the entire situation with the pitching staff and leave things like that up in the air. But if he can settle in and be that contributor, and if one more pitcher can step up and be that reliable John Taylor type or Jose Mata type, guys that you've relied on, or Tyler Webb last year, guys that you have relied on to be that shutdown 7th, 8th inning guy when the starter starts to run out of gas, I would argue that a John Taylor or a Tyler Webb in a setup role has been more important than a reliable Michael Roth, because you can muddle through a Friday night starter, but if you can rely on that guy to come give you a solid inning or two every other start, especially when you get into postseason, when you get some of those more high caliber opponents, those are the guys that you're just going to be able to rely on to get those innings, to shut down rallies, to continue to keep the team behind so they don't get that false sense of hope and expect to claw back into games that could potentially end your season. So right now, Jack Wynkoop, the true freshman, is really starting to come around, and hopefully he can continue this. And he's got a big test coming up at home this week, as do all of the Gamecocks. Joey Pancake and the crew, LB Dantzler, Max Schrock, and those guys need to continue to string together timely hitting, a lot of 2-out rallies here, and jumping all over LSU early in the games and adding insurance runs late. South Carolina tried to scratch back into the game on Friday. They were nearly able to do it. South Carolina, in my opinion, was not too far away from just a plain old sweep here out there in LSU. So you look at the schedule, the Gamecocks have positioned themselves nicely, but it's not going to get any easier. South Carolina, no midweek games this week because of exams, and then after that, the baseball team can fully focus on doing what they need to do. Again, a number 2 ranked Vanderbilt squad comes to the Ray here in Columbia to try and make their case for the all-time record wins in the SEC, taking down South Carolina's record as well. Then you've got a midweek game against Wofford, which is at this point a must-win. You cannot afford any slip-ups. You're home again over the second week of the month with the Bulldogs here from Georgia, a midweek game, home game against Presbyterian, and then that final crucial matchup, that weekend series, season-ending slate out there in Mississippi State. So a lot of work to do. By no means is South Carolina out of the woods. When you check the polls, North Carolina number 1, Vanderbilt jumps LSU to number 2, LSU number 3, NC State all the way up to number 5, Virginia number 7, Florida State number 10, Louisville 13, Arkansas still ahead of South Carolina 14, South Carolina 15. So there you have it. Clemson continues to creep up at 18. So there are a lot of highly ranked teams in the region. If South Carolina does not win a national seed and is able to host a regional but not a super regional, you look at a team like a North Carolina with a super regional, maybe a team like LSU or Vanderbilt, NC State would be a possibility. South Carolina has been up to NC State before in the postseason. I believe that was all the way back in 2008 and 2009 when they lost. They had their season cut short up there in Raleigh. So there's going to be plenty of people fighting and scratching for those top 7 national seeds, but I think if South Carolina can position themselves nicely here, it would be a stretch to be anything better than a 6 or 7 national seed. I think a regional is probably a lock at this point unless they just kind of fall apart here at the end of the season and have to go on the road somewhere. Maybe even a Clemson sneaks in there and gets a national seed. But overall, things are starting to be answered here if you take a look at the baseball team and how things are being ironed out. And I made a comment before the last commercial break about people and their expectations with the baseball program. And people have been starting to make the comments, gosh, one bad thing about winning these national championships and appearing for another national championship is that expectations are going to be unreal. When the Gamecocks start to lose a little bit, then people are going to start to get frustrated, and it won't be fair to the guys. It won't be fair to the baseball team because people are just setting these unfair expectations. And I don't really understand that train of logic. And feel free to chime in on the CrowLine if you agree or disagree, or if you're listening on Spreecast to live chat with us here at Spreecast.com, or email us, Carolina@y'all.com, about what you think about this. But in my opinion, what do you think Nick Saban and Alabama think about unfair expectations, or Les Miles at LSU, or any other program, the Lakers out there in LA, or the Yankees, or the Red Sox, or any other high-profile sports program in the world of athletics? What's wrong with high expectations? I think if you settle for average expectations, then you will get average expectations 8 times out of 10. You might have a few overachieving years, but if you're just like, we tried hard and we did all right, but that's fine. There's always next year. That's the kind of nonsense talk that kept South Carolina as a football program kind of in the middle of the SEC for so long. And some people would argue that we're still in the middle of the SEC. So I don't think it's fair, or I don't think you should settle for mediocre expectations. I think when you appear in 3 national championships in a row, I don't think you should settle for an average season. I don't think you should settle for being in the the bottom half of the top 25. South Carolina is ranked 15th right now, and that's probably the lowest they've been ranked in the last 3.5 years. So it doesn't really make sense to me that people go ahead and say, "Oh well, it's gonna make everyone unreasonable. It's gonna make them spoiled." If you want to be spoiled, if you don't want to be spoiled, go root for another program that's happy with just kind of being in the middle of the pack and we gave it our best shot. I think with these expectations comes growth and higher expectations with the program. I think you expect better out of your recruits. You expect better out of your players, your facilities, your alumni, your coaching staff, your presidents and athletic directors. I think a rising tide lifts all boats. So with the rising tide of expectations, I think that's a healthy thing to have, and you should always be continuing for improvement and to strive to get better. I don't think when people say, well, expectations are unreasonable this time around, I just don't really get that. And I don't really think that's a very fair assessment of the program. And I don't think you should just be happy with doing okay with everything else. And that's just where I stand on that situation. We're going to jump out to another quick break, but we'll be right back here as we continue along on the Carolina CrowLine.
Let's pull the 2-seat out, baby. It's wherever you want to go.
Here's the secret to dazzling Mom this Mother's Day. Surprise her early with a gorgeous, unique, multicolored rose bouquet from FiestaRoses.com. Live, fresh-cut roses in jaw-dropping spring colors you've never seen before arrive long before Mother's Day, so Mom feels extra special. And that legendary FiestaRoses.com quality means her amazing, multicolored bouquet still lasts well past Mother's Day. Plus, it pays to call or click FiestaRoses.com right now. Use promo code MOTHER and save 20% by ordering early. Call 800-707-4833. Call now and remember to use the promo code MOTHER to save 20% by ordering early. Impress Mom that you didn't wait till the last minute. Go to fiestaroses.com and use the promo code MOTHER to save 20%. Or call 800-707-4833. That's 800-707-4833. Or click fiestaroses.com.
Don't complain about your cable bill going up and up and up. Do something about it. Grab a pencil and jot down this special number, 1-855-645-MY-TV. The more cable TV rates go up, the better digital satellite TV looks. Say goodbye to the cable guy and get more of your favorite channels in 100% digital quality for less money. Call 1-855-645-MY-TV. Sign up for packages starting as low as $19.99 and there's no equipment to buy. You get free HD TV upgrade, a free DVR upgrade, and free professional installation. You control what you watch when you watch it. Record your favorite shows. Pause and rewind live TV. Even skip the commercials. Watch local channels too. At just $19.99, what are you waiting for? Pull out your major credit or debit card. Call 1-855-645-MY-TV. 1-855-645-MY-TV. Say goodbye to the cable guy. Cut costs and get more. 1-855-645-MY-TV. 1-855-645-MY-TV.
All right, welcome back into the Carolina CrowLine. We are wrapping up our baseball coverage here in the front half of the program. I'm about ready to jump into a little bit of NFL draft. Of course, everybody was tuned into the NFL draft over the weekend. At least I was. I'm sure my wife was quite tired of watching the NFL draft Thursday, Friday, pretty much all day Saturday. It does get boring after a while, but I do enjoy the NFL draft, and I guarantee you the guys, I don't know if you pay attention to the guys that were actually in New York, the NFL fans that were actually in New York for the NFL draft, but those guys, they're enjoying themselves. They obviously sell alcohol there at Radio City Music Hall, and I guess after hours and hours of sitting there with earpieces in your ear, listening to pick after pick after pick of teams you don't care about and players you've probably never even heard of, you're going to have to do something to kind of keep it interesting, and you could tell if you watch any of the coverage after an afternoon of drinking and sitting there and being bored, those guys with their NFL jerseys on, those football fans, definitely found things to keep them entertained there in the background during draft coverage. But overall, 7 Gamecocks were drafted. We talked about this last week on the program before the actual draft. We pretty much all were in agreement that DJ Swearinger was going to be the first Gamecock off the board, and he certainly was, being drafted down to the Texans in the second round. Oddly enough, South Carolina, DJ Swearinger goes down there. DeAndre Hopkins, Texans' first-round pick from Clemson, joins those guys down there as well. So a little bit of Clemson-Carolina rivalry is going to be going on full swing there in the Houston Texans locker room. And then the main question overall was, how far was A. Sanders going to slide after pretty much a subpar scouting combine, coming out early, skipping his senior season? And then, obviously, the $64,000 question was going to be, where was Marcus Lattimore going to end up? I thought Devontae Holland was going to go in the middle rounds of the draft. But overall, 7 Gamecocks drafted. A. Sanders went to the Jaguars in the 4th round, number 101 overall. It was a 4th-round kind of year for the Gamecocks. Marcus Lattimore selected shortly after that to the 49ers in the 4th round, number 131 overall. Right after Marcus Lattimore, defensive end Devin Taylor goes to the Lions at pick 132. Devontae Holloman slips all the way to the Cowboys in the 6th round at number 185 overall. T.J. Johnson, 7th round, number 251 overall. And, of course, Justice Cunningham gets picked by the Colts, last pick of the entire draft, 7th round overall, number 254. Mr. Irrelevant, as they call it. Oddly enough, that is USC's second Mr. Irrelevant in the last 5 years. Ryan Suckup, if you remember, was Mr. Irrelevant by Kansas City in 2009. So 7 Gamecocks drafted. I was a little bit surprised that T.J. Johnson and Justice Cunningham were drafted. I guess I could go either way on that. We weren't quite sure what was going to happen with those guys. But overall, 7 Gamecocks drafted. Very good, a lot better than I think what people expected. On the free agent front, several guys have signed contracts with NFL teams that did not get drafted. Let me just quickly update you with those guys. Byron Gerardo, the defensive tackle, has agreed to terms with the Chargers. Reginald Bowens has a training camp invite from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Linebacker Shaq Wilson has a training camp invite from the Saints. Aldrick Fordham has agreed to terms with the Rams. Defensive tackle Aldrick Fordham. Kenny Miles, running back, of course, has a training camp invite to the Redskins. Adam Yate has signed a free agent contract with the Jaguars, so he and former teammate Ace Sanders will be reunited. And then Demario Jeffrey was not drafted, a former 4-star, nearly 5-star linebacker right here from home, the shadows of Williams-Brice Stadium, Columbia, South Carolina, agrees to terms with the Carolina Panthers. So a lot of Gamecocks have found homes here at the end of this season. So a very productive draft overall, a record-setting draft in terms for the SEC. The SEC had more players drafted than any other conference and set a record for the most players from one conference ever being drafted in a single draft as well. When you look at some of these teams going all around, of course, you start with Marcus Lattimore. Again, Frank Gore and LaMichael James, 2 very productive running backs. Frank Gore, another guy who has recovered from 2 successful knee surgeries that will be able to be there and mentor Marcus Lattimore. If you've watched any of the ESPN specials or any of the interviews of Marcus Lattimore on ESPN, he's always commented that Frank Gore was one of those guys that reached out to him and tried to contact him shortly after that second devastating knee injury against the Tennessee Volunteers. So a lot in common for those 2 guys. I think a great role model for Marcus Lattimore. Of course, San Francisco has LaMichael James as well. Last year, I believe, was his rookie year in the league. So Marcus Lattimore is not expected to really do anything this coming up for the 2014 NFL football season. If you've heard John Harbaugh's comments, he said that they're going to take it very, very slow with Marcus Lattimore. They're going to wait till he's 100% right physically before he ever sets foot on that field. I know Marcus, and you heard him talking about how he kept saying over and over and over, he's going to be ready for the start of the 2014 NFL football season. But overall, I think this is definitely the safe bet. They're probably going to put him on the PUP list, the physically unable to perform list. And once you're on that PUP list, I think you're stuck there for like the first 6 weeks of the season before you're eligible to come off that. So I don't anticipate seeing Marcus Lattimore in a 49er jersey on the field in 2014 unless there are some injuries that take place later in the season and he just comes off the bench out of necessity. When you take a look at DJ Swearinger going down to the Texans, I think he'll be able to contribute right away on the defense, certainly on special teams. His versatility is key, spending some time at corner and at both of the safety spots as well. I think he'll be able to come in with some sub-packages and be a starter in some of those sub-packages right away. So I expect you to see DJ Swearinger out there on the field for the Houston Texans this year as well. When you think about Ace Sanders going to the Jacksonville Jaguars overall in the 4th round, number 101, I think you'll definitely see him as a special teams threat. A lot of people thought he may go to the Rams, but as soon as the Rams took Tavon Austin in the 1st round, then that pretty much sealed the deal for Ace Sanders, I think. But you will definitely see him on the field for the Jaguars this year, especially as a weapon for Blaine Gabbert. Again, Blaine Gabbert is just a quarterback that has struggled to kind of find his rhythm. The Jaguars drafting that big offensive tackle to try and help the protection of Gabbert and surround him with some weapons. So I believe that you will also see Ace Sanders on the field as well. And just a couple other news and notes. How about the Chargers out there drafting Manti Te'o? I know if you're a Gamecock fan out there in Gamecock country, you know that Melvin Ingram was their number 1 pick last year in the top 10 at the linebacker position, but then taking another linebacker in Manti Te'o, who slipped farther than a lot of people thought he would go in the 2nd round. Excuse me. But, again, just 2 young linebackers there. The comparisons to Junior Seau are going to be the first things that come out there in San Diego. But a good place, I think, for Manti to go, his family being in Hawaii. and somebody like the legend of Junior Seau out there and continue just kind of the bloodlines of the Polynesian linebacker. And you know, say what you want about Monte Te'o. You know, I don't know exactly what's going on behind the ears with him sometimes. And with that whole situation a few months ago with the whole girlfriend thing, we've pretty much established that, you know, half of that stuff that he did actually lie about, and he continued to talk about his fake girlfriend that never was, even after he found out it was a hoax, if he didn't know it was a hoax the entire time. And, you know, whatever has been said about Monte Te'o doesn't need to be said again, because, you know, I don't even know how you go out, air quote there, go out with a girl for more than 1 year and you never even meet her before, and you think she's your girlfriend, and you talk on the phone and it's really a dude, and your family comes out and says, oh, she used to come to Hawaii to visit, but that turns out that was complete crap because she was never even alive to begin with. I don't know. A lot of stuff, a lot of questions going on there. I don't know about all that, but interesting situation to say the least. And then the news comes out today that the Jets released Tim Tebow after that. You know, their mess at quarterback continues. They draft the quarterback out of West Virginia who sat there and sat there and sat there and sat there and finally gets drafted in the second round. So people are still wondering what in the heck the Jets are doing. Everybody wants to talk about the Jets. I don't know why the Jets are so popular. They're such a nightmare. I think, you know, if I was Mark Sanchez after the butt fumble last year, I think I just would have just said see ya and walked off the field and just never returned again. But you got to give the guy some props. He's really struggled. Obviously, they don't believe he's a long-term answer there at quarterback. Again, the quarterback drama there up in New York continues. And then how about E.J. Manuel jumping up in the first round and going to Buffalo? I'm going to be excited to see how that works. E.J. Manuel up there, of course, Stephon Gilmore, the lockdown corner out of South Carolina, and then you got C.J. Spiller up there as well. You've added some nice defensive pieces with Mario Williams up there in Buffalo. So those guys seem like they're really trying to turn the corner there. Buffalo has just kind of been stuck in mediocre land for the past decade with football, but some exciting moves in the draft overall. I thought it was great to see all these Gamecocks going. It's something that you did not see just as many as 3 or 4 seasons ago. I think next year you definitely will not see that many Gamecocks going. There's only about 5 seniors in the class this year, Connor Shaw, Jimmy Legree, and a few other guys. There are potentially some juniors that could make the jump, like a Victor Hampton or a Kelsey Quarles, possibly. Those names have been kicked around. But at this point, we'll have to wait and see. But at this point, I really don't see them leaving as a junior as a great idea. I don't see any of those guys being a very, very high draft pick. But we're just going to have to wait and see here. Overall, again, just a very, very solid draft, something that I think the Gamecocks should definitely be proud of, and just more success. We're going to jump out to another quick break. We'll be right back on the Carolina CrowLine. All right, welcome back to the Carolina CrowLine. We are chugging along here on the program. We've gotten done with the baseball. We've gotten done with the NFL draft. Now, let's turn our attention to the men's basketball program. A lot of change on the horizon for the men's basketball program. This past week, there were two young men in high school that were kind of on commitment watch. They were making their announcements public last week. One of them, and they were down to South Carolina and a couple other programs. One of them chose Seton or Villanova, I believe, and the other one was down to either Miami or South Carolina, and he chose South Carolina. And that adds the sixth member of this recruiting class to the upcoming basketball season. Sindarius Thornwell out of Lancaster, Justin Mackey out of Irmo, Desmond Ringer out of Georgia, Dwayne Notice, Reggie Theus Jr. out of California, and Demetrius Henry out of Florida. And once you add Jalen Shaw, a freshman guard out of Hartsville, that adds 6 incoming freshmen. That puts South Carolina over the maximum allowed players on the basketball team. So you knew something had to give. The numbers were not going to work out if everything stayed the same, and we found out last week what exactly that was. And Frank Martin has announced that 4 basketball players that were on the roster last year will be transferring. Rising seniors Eric Smith, Brian Richardson, and R.J. Slauson, will be transferring, as well as rising junior Damian Leonard will be leaving the program. It came out shortly after that Eric Smith will be continuing his college basketball down at Coastal Carolina. It is not yet known where Brian Richardson, R.J. Slauson, or Damian Leonard will continue to play their basketball. Damian Leonard, a former 4-star recruit out of J.L. Mann High School, will be moving along as well. And Carlton Geathers, a guy who wasn't highly recruited but came to South Carolina under Darren Horn, really spent some time changing his body, getting into basketball shape, was somebody that they really looked forward to counting on this past basketball season, wound up hurting his kneecap, tearing some meniscus in his kneecap at a charity basketball game over the summer. Fractured his kneecap and did not dress for one game. It looked like he would continue maybe to appear later in the season, but just recently had a second surgery on that knee. Right now, it looks like his kind of career at USC is up in the air right now, so that would put a 5th person kind of out of the program, I guess would be one way to say it. So when you look at 2013-2014 basketball program, you've got Brenton Williams, who will be a senior, Bruce Ellington, who is on football scholarship, but will be returning to the basketball team as a senior as well. Carlton Geathers is a redshirt junior, but we're not quite sure how his career is going to work out, if he's going to continue to be a member of the basketball team. Austin Constable, who is a walk-on sophomore. Brian Steele, the walk-on sophomore, who appeared a lot late in the season. Of course, Michael Carrera will be a sophomore. Mindaugas Kaichanis will be a sophomore. Lamonis Chatkevicius will be a sophomore. Tyrone Johnson, a transfer down from Villanova, who sat out the second half of this year and will sit out the first half of next year. He will be eligible to play in January. Sindarius Thornwell, of course, a freshman. Justin Mackey will be a freshman. Desmond Ringer, a freshman. Dwayne Notice, a freshman. Jalen Shaw, a freshman. Reggie Theus Jr., again, son of famed NBA player Reggie Theus, and Demetrius Henry will be a freshman as well. So when you take a look at the projected roster for 2013-2014, you've got 2 seniors, Brenton Williams and Bruce Ellington, and everybody else, with the exception of Carlton Geathers, is either going to be a sophomore or as a freshman. And that is what I talk about, a young team. However, we talked about this all year long during the basketball season. We are waiting on Frank Martin to get his type of players into the program so that we can start to turn the corner. These are talented players. When you look at Sindarius Thornwell, he's a top 50 recruit in the United States from Lancaster. Went up and played his college ball at Oak Hill Academy. I believe that's in Virginia. He has decided to come back home to South Carolina. Demetrius Henry is another consensus top 100 player, 4-star kid out of the Miami area. It came down to Miami or South Carolina. During his announcement speech last week, he said there was one reason why he chose South Carolina. He said 2 words, Frank Martin. And that's the kind of thing that I expect you to hear as the seasons progress with Frank Martin. We talked about how many years should he get to try and turn this program around, and we said he's going to need maybe 3, maybe 4 before everybody that was here under Darren Horn has moved on down the road, and Frank has the kind of players that he wants to have. Well, it looks like it, depending on how these guys kind of gel together as a team and how they progress as young men in the college game, it looks like it may be even sooner than that. I'm not going to call NCAA tournament next year. I think that's a little bit too bold if you ask me. But again, a lot of positive moves on the horizon, a lot of reasons to be very excited here. You've got help on the wing. Sindarius Thornwell can play the 2, the 3, or the 4. Demetrius Henry will probably be a 4 or a 5. Dwayne Notice will be a 1 or 2. Reggie Theus is another wing player, and Desmond Ringer can probably play the 5 as well. And, of course, when you add in Jalen Shaw out of Hartsville, a guy who can play the 1 or the 2, point guard help is dearly needed. And Dwayne Notice is a bigger guard as well. Jalen Shaw and Justin Mackey and maybe Reggie Theus Jr. would be the 3 kind of candidates I would kind of throw out there as possibilities to redshirt if things aren't going well, or Frank Martin wants to see those guys develop a little bit more. Maybe he wants to throw everybody into the fire right away to see what they can do and kind of see how they can adopt his mantra of work hard, play hard, get those rebounds, and play defense. But Sindarius Thornwell, I think, is the guy you should really target next year. He's going to, in my opinion, and I've said this before right after he committed, I think as soon as he sets foot on campus, he's probably going to be the most talented player on this basketball team. So a lot of turnover. We'll continue to talk about that situation as the summer progresses. We're going to jump out to our very last break of this short hour, and then we're going to be back with something a little bit more fun. The top 10 coaching rants of all time. Stick with us on the Carolina CrowLine.
Boss man, 'cause you're bad overtime, up his can. All I wanna do is put a drink in my hand. To fill it up, I'll throw it down.
Mom, I had the best dream.
Well, good morning to you, too.
Okay, so I was a knight. I had a sword, and our house was a castle. There was this angry dragon. It was kinda scary.
Oh, yeah?
But I protected the castle.
Oh, that's my brave little man. I'm glad our castle is safe.
Your home is your castle, and sometimes you need help defending it. The National Association of Realtors supports maintaining homeowner tax incentives because they make home ownership more affordable for more families. Learn more at houselogic.com.
If you depend on prescription opioid painkillers or heroin to get through each day, you may ask yourself, how did I get here? Withdrawal and rehab seem like scary and difficult roads, but there is a different way. I know because I was just like you and I found it at turntohelpnow.com. At turntohelpnow.com, I learned about different ways to get help, including those in a private setting without the need for daily visits. Find your courage and go to turntohelpnow.com today.
This is a referral service. Calls will be routed to an independent referral insurance agency.
Do you know the number 1 cause of bankruptcy? No, it's not losing your job or running up credit card debt. It's not even divorce. It's medical costs. If you and your family don't have health insurance, just one serious illness or accident could be financially devastating. But now there's good news, really good news. A health insurance hotline has been established to provide health insurance for all Americans, even uninsured Americans with pre-existing conditions. Now anyone can get health insurance even if you have a pre-existing medical condition. I repeat, now anyone can get health insurance coverage. Call now for a free no-obligation quote on affordable health plans available to you. Again, this is a free hotline for anyone, even if you have pre-existing conditions. Protect you and your family from sudden unexpected medical costs. Call the free health insurance hotline right now at 1-800-838-5562. That's 1-800-838-5562. Call 1-800-838-5562.
Welcome back into the Carolina CrowLine. I'm your host, Tyler Garrett. As we begin our final segment of the program, I came across something that really I enjoyed. It really made me laugh, and we usually spend the last segment of the program on something a little bit on the lighter side. We might get away from Gamecock sports a little bit, but I saw this in the Chicago Sun-Times. It was the top 10 coaching rants of all time, and I guarantee you those of you that are listening right now probably have at least one or two, if you're a sports fan, that pop into your head immediately right away. And some of these I had never even seen before. There was one, the biggest one, and you can see this on Chicago Sun-Times if you go to blogs.suntimes.com and just go to the sports page, and you can see the rants. They did this in honor of a guy named Lee Elia, who was a former manager of the Chicago Cubs, and I guess it was 30 years ago today in 1983 when he kind of went nuts after Chicago lost and just went on a cussing rampage, obscenity-laced rampage for about 3.5 minutes. But a lot of them you see the Dennis Green rant, we are who they thought they were. There's one from Ditka. Of course, Ozzie Guillen is in there. Lou Piniella, when he was manager of the Cubs, he went nuts. You guys remember that one. Tony La Russa, after that Cardinals-Cub game several years ago. Mike Singletary on Vernon Davis, I guess, what was that, 3 or 4 years ago, when he talks about I'd rather have 11 players on the team just get penalized over and over and over again. Jim Mora's classic playoffs rant and those sorts of things. Mike Gundy at Oklahoma State, I'm a man, I'm 30. Or I'm 40, whatever he said. These things were amazing, and they were just hilarious. I totally recommend you going and watching these things. But there's one I want to play for you, and that's from one Bob Knight. And it's impossible to have a top 10 rant list without having at least one from Coach Bobby Knight. So I'm going to let you get a listen to this. This is just absolutely hilarious.
To another chance for Bobby Knight to meet the press. In yesterday's exchange of pleasantries with the Fourth Estate, Knight wouldn't make outright predictions, but he did make one thing crystal clear.
If I could determine what the hell he's going to look like next year, that's just what I have no idea. I got to wait till next year to watch him play. I mean, I can't do that.
You would anticipate...
Wait a minute.
He's rubbing a cup upside down to see if a genie pops out.
I see Bailey. The image is fading. Just a second. Coming back. Yes. Images are tough to deal with. Sometimes you got to get them in line. Yes, I see Bailey being better.
Do you see him being the playmaker for next year's team?
He's back to the glass, rubbing it some more.
I mean, this is a damn cheap piece of crystal here. This isn't expensive enough to answer all those questions. This thing... Wait a minute, there's something forming here. It says, what a question.
So again, this stuff is just hilarious. It never gets old, these guys, and they just go completely nuts. And again, here there's like Ditka going on here.
Doesn't matter which one run. There'll be a quarterback that'll be named next week that'll be the starter. There's 3 quarterbacks on this football team. Whichever one starts. Whichever ones don't, we'll back him up. Period. Cut and dried. It's nobody's concern but ours. Nobody's. Next.
Injuries from the game?
Talk to the trainer. Next.
Mike, why are you in such a bad mood?
What do you care?
Right.
Okay. If you were 2-7, you'd be in a bad mood, too. What next?
Mike, is this more like a training camp type practice as opposed to a regular season?
Yes. Next. Not very much fun, is it? No?
No.
All right. I'll see you guys.
All right, so there's a little bit there. Again, just you really have to go to the website. I'll link it to the Facebook page and the Twitter feed, but some of these are, again, obscenity laced, so I played some of the more mild ones. Of course, I can't play Piniella or Guillen or half of these guys. Most of them are baseball managers, oddly enough. These guys must have very high stress jobs. Baseball and basketball. So the stress of the profession must be getting to these guys a little bit more than it does some other people. But I highly encourage you to go ahead and take a listen to that just for your pure enjoyment, because it will definitely be a great source of entertainment, the top 10 coaching rants of all time. That's it for our program. I'm Tyler Garrett. Glad you could join us on this edition of the program. Again, keep your eyes towards baseball to see how South Carolina finishes up the season, to continue to position themselves for that late push, and maybe is a national seed in the picture. We'll have that cleared up a little bit on the next edition of the program. Glad you could join us. We'll see you next week. Go Cox.